Welcome back to the Ask the Color Expert podcast. Today's very special guest is Blake Reed Evans. He is a global Redken Pro artist and owner of not one, but two salons, Sheer Art salons in Tampa. I just found that out today. I can't believe there's two. And he is also hosting his first Hair Escape Costa Rica, which I'm very jealous of that. And he has over 63,000 Instagram followers. I found him on social media. I've attended both in person and virtual classes with him. I am also a Florida gal, and we're so blessed to have him in our area. He's amazing and he's very hard to track down. So I am very, very excited that he is here on the podcast today. Welcome, Blake.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thanks for being on the class. I even saw that you're on the one just the other day. So
Yes,
thank
and it
you.
was very good. And what I love about you, we are very similar. When I first came to your first class, I was like, I'm curious to see because most educators are completely opposite of how I teach. And there's
Mm.
very few that I have a lot in common with. And you're one of the ones I have a lot in
Oh,
common with.
wow.
It's
Yeah.
like you're not trying to be super cagey about things. You're fully authentic and honest. You're not trying to be clever with techniques that make you look like you're doing something different even when it's not. Like you're a very real hairdresser and I love that
Thank you.
because in the last few years since the pandemic, I think everybody's trying to do something really clever that looks like it's this amazing thing and in the end it's about
Hmm.
placement formulation and, timing and all the things. So I love that you're real. I love that your work is very commercial. Like people walking down the street can wear your hair. They don't have to be on a runway in New York, but you can do that work. And that's
Yeah.
why I love that you're so well rounded. I see more avant garde things that you do, but I also see you do the everyday hair color. And I love that. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for that. Thank you for being you. Um, Salon ownership is brutal, especially in today's landscape. So having two salons, how many stylists do you have? Are you commission based? Are you booth rent? What is your structure and how do you do what you do? That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. So our salon, Share It Salons, we are commission based. It is a company that was founded in 1986 and is founded by Joanne Powers. So she founded it then with one location, started off in literally like 450 square feet, two chairs. And from there, it just grew. She started knocking down walls, relocated one of the locations to a prime spot, and then from there it just grew. And through Summit Salon Business Center, learned about having a shareholder program. So she did started adding on shareholders, and then when I started there in 2011, started there as an associate or an assistant or an apprentice, depending on what word you want to use, and then I became a shareholder about 6 years ago. So there's a group of us that are owners in this that we're an employee owned company essentially, and so we have two locations. The second location opened about 10 years ago, and now we have 75 employees. Not all of them are service providers because we do have a pretty strong front desk team, and it takes a lot of people to make this happen. So I definitely by no means do this by myself. And in fact, what I love about the way that we have it set up is that everyone can kind of focus on what they're good at. So, like, I focus on people and marketing and social media and education, and I kind of get to do that. But like, I don't have to order inventory because my business partner Valerie takes care of that, and she's really good at that. And if I had a salon by myself, that would be the first thing that I would outsource is like inventory management because I couldn't. It's not my wheelhouse. So yeah, so that's where we're at now, and managing it is possible because of the partnership I have with other people.
That's amazing. I did the summit as well. And when we got to the point of the shareholder piece, people got scared.
It's
It was
very
like,
well,
oh,
yeah,
I don't
because
think I'm ready. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounded like
it's a
such a great
lot of
idea. And
money. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's a lot of because for people who are trying to understand what does being a shareholder mean, it means that you like take money that you've earned and invest it into the business that you are now investing in, right? Like, so there's a chance that oh my gosh, what if this all goes away? Or because I have a direct influence over the business, I can grow it, right? So, since I became a shareholder in 2019, we hovered around 50 employees. Um, pandemic happened, every salon owner will relate to this, is that number. I think we ended up getting up to like 56, maybe before the pandemic started. The number dropped, of course. And then now we're back, but we're back with 75, so like
Amazing.
it's amazing. But recruitment was all I thought about and took care of for a long time. So now it's just like it's a pretty smooth process now, so that now we are at 75. Now we have the growing pains of having a lot of new employees. So now our new focus is coaching them hard. And if people need to leave the company because they're not breaking even, like, those are conversations we have to focus on now. So it's like it's a completely different ball game. It's just, once one problem is solved, next one pops up.
Well, it sounds like it's time for you to create a training on how to recruit, because that is a pandemic in our industry right now. It is
Yeah.
so difficult. I have an ad out right now, and yesterday I'm, sitting talking to a friend, and I see you have a new applicant. I get so excited and I press on it, and it's like experienced cake decorator at, a supermarket. And I was like, awesome.
Great.
So I think people don't even read the job description. They don't read the specifications of what that you need an actual license. And it can be really frustrating. And then there's, once you find them, the curve of all the training. So
Mhm.
I love the system that you're doing, because you're giving everyone a growth path for sure. Because it's frustrating when you start at a salon and you're so excited, and you're assisting, and then you're like, I can't wait to do a client. And then you do the client, and then you get busy, and then you get to a certain point where you're like, what's next? Where
Yeah.
with that system, there's always a what's next.
Yeah.
You never hit a ceiling, which is
Oh,
awesome.
yeah, I mean, it's so true. Like, I hit the top level in the salon, and I was like, "Is this it?" And I was already a shareholder by that point, so I was like, "Is this it?" I was 29 or whatever, like, I'm 29 years old, and this is it?
Yeah.
And then we went to Summit, talked to our coach, goes, and we got everything set up to now where we have more levels so we can keep going. Because I was like, "This can't be it," like, I was panicking, and I was already invested in the business. So, yeah, so it's just it really is just a great system. But in terms of recruitment, like, recruitment is a two-headed problem. It's like, great, you can get them to work for you and apply and everything, but then you need to focus on retention. And retention, I think, is the hardest thing, because there are so many options. Like, and we're hairdressers. I We can go literally do hair in a field, right? Like, and people will show up. People We could do hair from home if we really wanted to. So, in terms of being a business owner, I think it's really important. You have to make it a place where people not only want to apply, but people would want to stay, and then even more importantly, like, have a career and stay long term. And you've got to make it worth it. And that's the hardest part, because Gen Z particularly, their needs are very, 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 very different than any other generation before them. And we have to meet those needs. Like, and that means we have to change things dramatically. And I'm 33 now, and like, I'm to the point now where I'm like, back in my day, but
Imagine how I feel.
and and it really, and back in my day means like just in 2019, because that's how quickly things have changed. So I think it's a beautiful thing. I don't think that, like, so many people want to say, like, Gen Z, they're so entitled, and I don't think that I think that there are some people who are entitled in that group, but I wouldn't paint the whole generation as entitled. I just think that they have really strong boundaries, more than any other generation has had before them, and we have to respect that. And I respect it hardcore. With that, you still have to, like, have just as strong boundaries as an owner with them on what your expectations are of them.
And that's the flex. I
Yeah.
agree with you 100%. Like, part of me envies their boundaries, and they're like,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I'm not working 40 hours. I'm not working 12 hours a day. I'm not giving up my lunch. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. But I also see a little bit of but if I just show up, you should tell me I'm wonderful, and I should get,
A
$100,000.
trophy. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the part that's a little
Yeah.
tough with the generational divide, for sure. Your trip to Costa Rica, I'm very jealous. There's something about Costa Rica. You know how things pop up that just keep popping up in different situations. Every new person I meet, which isn't very often, but I'll be at a party, I'll be somewhere and I'll meet someone. The topic of Costa Rica pops up from them, not me. So I'm
Mhm.
like, feel like I'm meant to go there. And I
Mhm.
have a group, I have a Hair Color Secrets Insider group, and there's several hundred of them. And I have 2 in-person events a year. And I keep having them here in Florida because it's amazing to have it in your hometown. You know how much work it involves with all the
Yeah.
things that you need. And they're happy to be here. But the last event I said, I'm feeling called to go to Costa Rica and I'd love to take all of you with me. Fill out this piece of paper if you guys would be interested. And the feedback that I got was, oh, it's out of the country. I don't have a passport. Oh, it's going to be more expensive. All the money stories come up and people were too, afraid. And then I get afraid because I'm like, well, I'm going to put out all this money and reserve a hotel. And you know what that's
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
putting yourself out there. It's a little
Yeah.
scary.
So
So
scary.
kudos to you for doing all the scary things, and
Yeah.
you're almost sold out. So that's amazing. And I would love to go. The dates didn't work for me. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yes, finally, my people are going to Costa Rica. I can be a hairdresser and get my trip in. But the dates didn't work. I was
Oh,
already
no.
committed. But hopefully you'll have another one and I
I
can
will.
jump on that one. So as a salon owner, if you had to pick one tip in the owner hat of what your number one thing that you would share with other owners is, what would that be?
The first thing that popped in my head when you said that was, listen and be flexible. We like my leadership style always is I'll ask for feedback, and I've tried to create an environment where it's safe for them to give feedback. So I don't get feedback and immediately start justifying all the decisions, because that is usually the biggest issue I see with salon owners is they start over explaining their
Defensive.
their
Yeah.
rules, right? So we try to create a safe environment where they can give feedback, and then we listen to them. But the biggest thing is that just because they gave you the feedback doesn't mean you have to implement what they want to be done. Like we just had a feedback session at one of our last staff meetings, and someone's suggestion was that the salon should take the hit for the $20 off referral program.
I've been
And
there. I've
yeah,
been
and I
there.
I was like, I hear you, but it's 50-50. Like, so it's $20 off. So is if they're at 50% commission, $10 with you, $10 with us. My question to them is, are you willing to lose $10 to gain a new client? Right. And majority of people will say yes. So to me, it's for that. And I don't know who that person was because it was an anonymous feedback. To that person, I just say, like, we need to have a bigger conversation, because if you're that stressed over $10, then we need to,
There's a bigger problem.
we've got a bigger problem. Right. And I don't want that to be the case. So, I want us to talk about it. So yeah, but also be open to change. There's been so many things where, like, the dress code thing, right? Like we had a solid black dress code for years, and we kept getting pretty consistent feedback that people were now not applying with our company because we had a solid black dress code.
We have a dress code as well.
Yeah, and we were like, you know what? Forget it. Let's get rid of it. And we have parameters and rules and stuff, but it's so lax. And then from there, that was one of the kind of catapults things that took off on our application. So yeah, so I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. If we're gonna lose employees over clothing, like, that's insane. So I'm like, let's just change the dress code. It's funny though, because people, I would probably say like 30% of the population still wears black most days, just because that's who we are.
You
But
still
the
want to be
first
told to
but
wear it.
that
They want it to be
Yeah,
their decision. That's
1,000%, yeah, and then, that first month, everyone was, like, wearing every color under the rainbow because they just went buck wild. And then, it got reined back in, but it's been good. It's been a couple of years now since we've changed that, but that's a good example of, like, just listen. Like, if there's consistent feedback, like, just listen to that.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I did the summit, I sat down at dinner with the person that I brought with me, and she said, just to let you know, everybody's not giving out the referral cards because they don't want to eat that. That was the term she used. They don't want to eat that $20. And I said, they're not eating anything. I said, we're splitting that. She's like, no, no, we lose the whole $20 off. I said, yeah, but you're a commission. And exactly. It took me, my veins in my neck were bulging trying to explain it. And I'm like, if I'm trying this hard to explain it to her, who's here with me at the summit, hearing the whole system, how much harder is it going to be to explain to them? And they never really got it.
Yeah.
It's like this sense of ownership that the staff has, where There's not a single other business that I'm aware of on this planet that when you get employed there, you're a 50-50 partner is basically what
Right.
commission is. You know what I
Right.
mean? You're 50% of everything and you have no skin in the game, no risk, no sleepless nights, no staring at the ceiling, wondering where this money's coming from to pay this and that.
Right.
You're the partner that's always getting paid, you know? And I'm like, doctors don't do it, lawyers don't do it. Like there's no other business that pays like that. So it is stressful as an owner. So that's a great tip. So the
Yeah.
next question is, as an educator to other educators, what would be your number one tip for them?
Um, my initial reaction to that is be there for them. Like you can't like you have to have some sort of like self-confidence and ego to like want to put yourself out there as an educator, obviously. Um, but you need to be there for the people that signed up for your class, that came to your show, that bought a ticket, that like they're spending so much money to have us, right? And if you're a brand educator and maybe your class is the free class, people like human beings are spending their time with you. Like that's a really big deal, particularly for a hairdresser, because there's nothing more valuable than a hairdresser's time. So like you've got to give it your all to them. I see so many people, they get nervous and they get caught up in their own head, or they um and that's very self-focused, or they're like, look at me, like you were saying earlier with like crazy techniques. And I know that there's a demographic for people who love crazy techniques, but what I know to be true is that majority of us make our money off of like highlighting blonde hair, kind of lived in, a little bit of gray coverage, like that's how majority of us in our industry make our money. So, it's I always try to be them focused first. Like I show up to a class in a salon that's hired me, and yes, I've talked to the salon owner or their education lead and got what they wanted, but I ask every single group, what do you want? Um, and that helps me solve like their problems specifically. Like generally, if I have a formulation class, I know what most hairdressers want to know when it comes to formulation, but I don't know what like specifically what those people want. So I always make sure I ask that at the beginning of every class, so then I can really make sure that I'm working with them. And then I also just talk to them like equals, because they are like, and I don't care if they've been doing it for 45 years or 4 days. We're all equals. We're all just hairdressers at the end of the day.
I love that. And one of my favorite things about you is one of my biggest pet peeves is the recipe hairdresser. What's the
Mm,
formula? What's the formula? What's the
yeah.
formula? And I love when you teach that you're not, use this on every single head and you're going to be a rock star. Like you explain
Yeah.
the why in with it, in with the what. So most people, like even Redken themselves, I mean, I don't want to get you in trouble because you're with Redken, but
Yeah.
when they put out those cards in Salon Centric with
Right.
recipes,
Right.
and everybody's like, "Oh, I got," and it's the holy grail. They're running around like, I got the Willy Wonka magic ticket. I got the formula. I
Yeah.
got the," and I'm like, "Oh God, they didn't share what was on the hair before the formula went on."
1,000%. Yeah, I
You
have a hard
know?
time with it. The way that I speak to it in classes, because it comes up a lot, and I have a lot of my fellow counterparts on online that they are recipe content creators, and I just always say like I love them. They are so inspirational. Sometimes people do some really weird stuff with formulation and it's so cool and it gives a great result. I just always say those are great inspiration. So when I am trying to, because I'm a problem solution colorist, so
Mhm.
like if I'm having a problem and the solution might be one of those things, I'll still be inspired by it, but I won't just like blindly take one of those formulas and apply it to someone's head because it looked pretty on an end cap, right? So, but just use it as inspiration. I think like that's the thing. I think that sometimes people like to use the recipe so that they can blame someone else if it goes sideways. Like I feel like there's that little subconscious part of it.
1000%.
But so they'll be like, "Oh, well, Blake posted this formula and that formula sucked." And it's
Yes.
like, "Well, it clearly didn't suck because you used it because you saw it from somewhere." So
Right.
you liked that piece of content that the formula came from. But yeah, that's why I always say I don't want to give you formulas. I want to teach you formulation. I had a guy one time in a class when I was teaching color no why in New York City at the Redken Exchange, and it was like day two, and he literally was in tears because he was like, "Why won't you guys give us
Give me
formulas?"
the answer.
And
Just give
he
me the
was like,
answer.
I came here because I wanted formulas. And he's literally just crying. He was like, "You New York City colorists always gatekeep." And he was
Mm.
from the city. And I was like, okay. I was like, do you want to go outside? I'm like, let's talk. And he's like, why are you guys, gatekeeping? And I was like, we're not gatekeeping anything. I was like, our goal is for you to walk out of here being able to formulate for yourself. So we don't do formulas. Um, and then he's like, but that's all I came here for. And I was like, so you feel like you spent your $1,400 properly if I just sat down and spouted out formulas at you? And he was like, yes. And I was like, fine. I was like, let's go back upstairs, sit down, tell me what you want. And I just like literally for 15 minutes, I just spouted out formulas and he was so happy. But I felt defeated as an educator because I was like, e- 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 yeah, great. Now you feel good for the next 6 months, but what do you do when a new trend takes off and now you need a new formula, So, yeah, it's just for me, it's just always about formulation over just giving the answer.
I loved one of your recent posts was the Olympic break dancer, and it's like when you're asking your coworker to drive by, and I mean that's when I'm training somebody new in the salon, and I see the panic look in their eyes and the like, "Come help me" thing. It's like the whole name of the class that you were teaching that person was color and know why. Like,
Yeah,
what part of that did he not think was you need to figure out the why?
yeah, yeah,
And I get the same thing. People get ups. They're like, just tell me the formula. Tell me but at my live events, we'll be doing a model and we'll be going through it as we're doing it, sharing every single step. And they'll say, but what was the formula? And I'm like, it
hmm,
doesn't matter. Like, write it down, but it doesn't matter because this girl that we're doing is not your client in your chair. She's not going to have the same density, the same texture, the same base color, the same percentage of gray. Like
yep,
everything changes on each individual situation. It's very frustrating. So
yeah. Which is
that would
why,
be my
like,
number one frustration.
at our salon, that's why we do like collaborative formulation where we're like, hey, I'm gonna get a second pair of eyes. So we stopped doing the drive-by thing. Once
So
I
you
had
just
some
are honest about it. That's
Yeah, we're
awesome.
we're straightforward about it. Like, I do it too. There are times where I'm like, "Man," I was like, "I'm thinking this or this," and I'll just bring in one of my coworkers just to get a different, point of view. Yeah, we stopped doing the whole drive-by thing 'cause, I that meme, I knew people were gonna love it, because it's so true. People are like, "Can you just do a quick drive-by?" And, you're, like, offering the client water while you're staring at their
Staring at
their
the property.
Yeah, so it's, we've all been there, but yeah. And I cannot believe that that woman made it to the Olympics with
I
her
know. I don't get it.
breakdancing.
I
It's
don't get it
so
at all. I don't get that that's even a thing in the Olympics. That's a whole other story.
yeah.
It's the Olympics have completely changed, definitely. Some ways not for the better. So then the other thing I wanted to ask you is, post-pandemic, it's, I shouldn't say everyone, there's been a big influx of people who want to be educators. And
Mhm.
the back in the day, like we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
back in the day, the only way you could become an educator is to hook up with a manufacturer, go through their training,
Yep.
schlep around the big flip chart and the samples and go in and out of salons, and you spend 8 hours a day educating for, $50.
Literally.
That has completely been blown wide open. And
Yeah.
you're really high up in the education realm with a manufacturer, which is not easy to do. So
Yeah.
kudos to you.
Thank you.
What advice would you give someone who, say, is one of your stylists in the salon and they're super talented? You see that they have what it takes to be an educator. How would you advise them to get started in education today in 2024 versus when you and I started getting into
Yeah.
education?
I mean, I always say you need to do it before you become it. So it's like you've got to your social platform has to be there, and so it doesn't matter how many followers you have at first, but like you've got to start teaching and start your page has to be geared towards hairdressers, and that's where you get to practice, right? Like teaching, doing tutorials and things of that nature. I am still very pro manufacturer, even if it's just to get your start, because these brands have education figured out. I work for Redken. We are the number one professional education brand in the US, if not in the world when it comes to professional hairdressers. And um, the way that they train us to teach is unmatched. And I've been around a lot of other brands. I've had other brands try to, whatever. And every time that I dig deep, I was like, there's no brand quite like Redken in terms of education and the science and everything like that. So you can at least get started and get your feet wet. They'll connect you with classes within the distributor or in a salon, and I think that that's such a great way to get started. And then you can kind of see where it goes from there. I've had a couple people over the last year or two ask why I haven't broken off and just done everything on my own. And the reason why I haven't is because I feel very supported by the brand.
Mhm.
They let me do, like, they don't have the constraints on me that I think that a lot of people think the brand would. I think there was a moment where the brand didn't know what to do with any of us that started getting followings online, and like, because brands want you to be in a box, they want you to be in their box, right? But Redken's done a good job at being like, "Eh, here, we'll expand the box a little bit for you." And then, and it's just been amazing, and Redken just connects me with some amazing hairdressers, and I just can't imagine not having Redken be a part of my life in some shape, way, or form. And the training they provide and the support and the coaching I get is still really massive. So I just always say, like, you're starting out, find a brand that you align with, and try it out. And if you don't like it, I'm a firm believer everything is a 30-second conversation away from being in it anyways. So like, if you don't like it, stop and then just go full independent. But like, I know people who are independent educators that, don't have a huge following online, and they have lucrative businesses and they can follow that passion. And I also think that education starts in your salon too. So can you teach a PK class at your staff meeting? Can you take on an associate or an assistant? Can you do all of those things? And you can find what works for you.
Definitely. And I think what most people don't realize with education, so back in the 80s, when I started out in the industry and went to my first hair show, I looked up on the stage and, the thumping music, the fog machines, the glittery, the little Britney Spears, mics,
Like,
everybody.
so yeah.
I was like, I want to be that when I grow up. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to do that. Well, back then, the Beth Minardis, the Vivians, the Trevor
Yeah.
Sorbys, all of
Yeah.
the,
The
icons of
greats.
the
Yeah.
industry, they were getting like 10 and 20 grand to be up on the stage and teach for a one class. Today, I don't know about you, but I'm not getting 20 grand. Like, it
I'm not
is
getting 20
completely
grand.
different.
Yeah.
So to your
Yeah.
point, if you're not aligned with a manufacturer, a lot of times going to a show and teaching, it's considered a privilege to be able to teach at the show. That is your pay. Basically,
Mhm.
you're getting in front of their audience. Everything is at your expense. I remember the one year I taught at Premiere Orlando, and my person who helps me, their flight got canceled, and I was
Mm.
on my own, and I had two big rolling duffel bags filled with books and cards and all these things, totally on my own. Packed class, was like, couldn't figure out the projector, the PowerPoint. I was all flustered, and it was the most real and authentic presentation I ever did, because I was in the screw it, I don't care mood. Like,
Mhm.
it was such a disaster that I was like, I don't even care what I say or how polished I am. This is a disaster. And people connect it to me so much more than they ever have, because I said, I started the class with, I don't know if you know this, but I'm not paid to be here. It cost me a couple $1,000s to be here. I had to fly here. I had to get my own hotel. I have to pay for all my own meals, and I have to bring all my own stuff and set up my own projector, bring my own extension cord. I went off, and they were
Yeah.
like, their jaws just dropped, and they couldn't believe it. And I didn't know, you know what I mean? I still looked at people that did big shows and thought, oh my gosh, it's so glamorous. You travel all over the world. Yes,
Yeah.
we do travel all over the world, but it's not always glamorous. So there is
Yeah.
another side to education, and to have the support of a company who's been around as long as Redken has, and, still doing a great job with providing education. So many manufacturers have shifted to Insta worthy people and
Mhm.
letting them take the ball and run with it. So
Mhm.
they're
Well, and
not
that's why I
they're
think
not
it's
grooming, they're
so
not training.
yeah, and that's why I think it's so important to build your online presence, is that then that can demand your financial value as well. Like, it does help a lot. But to your point of it not being glamorous when you're traveling, I just got this new app for travel, and it's called Flighty, and it took all of my flights since 2020 and compiled
I'll have to
data
write this
on it.
down. I love that.
It's really it's really, really cool. The thing that horrified me was that in the last 5 years, I have lost 143 hours of my life to delays. And
Mm.
38% of all flights I've taken have been delayed in some shape, way, or form. So if that is any insight to what it's like to being an educator, is you spend a lot of time waiting in airports, or waiting on Ubers, or waiting on, whatever. But to me, it's all worth it. Like that stuff, like a delayed flight, like rarely bugs me because it's so far out of my control that there's literally nothing I can do. Like, I was in the airport this summer, and my flight that was already canceled, and then I was put on a replacement flight. The replacement flight was canceled, and I was just like, okay, guess I'm going to a hotel. And like, a woman was like sobbing, and who knows what she was headed to. Like maybe she was missing something important, but I was just like, okay, it comes with the territory. How to cancel the next day of clients, like, it happens. But to me, it's all worth it. But I do education for the love of it, not for the money or the glamour or the recognition. um, all of those things are kind of tertiary things that come along with it. I love teaching, and I love it so much because it's impacted my life so much. It's helped me earn a really beautiful living for myself in doing hair, and therefore has provided a really great life for myself and my family. And I know that that's possible for everyone in this industry. Particularly, we have so much control in our industry, and that's why I love classes and teaching so much.
Absolutely. And we're glad that you love it, and we're glad that you're part of our amazing industry and giving back to so many people and sharing your knowledge with everyone as much as possible, both virtually and in person. So that's amazing. How can people reach you? I'm sure one or two people listening are going to be like, Costa Rica, sign me up. And I know
Yeah.
there's only 2 spots left. So how can they reach you and get in touch and find out more?
Yeah. So if you want to connect with me, it's Blake Reed Evans on all social platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever your thing is. And then if you want information on Costa Rica, you can just go to blakereedevans.com. I've owned that for 10 years, and I finally put it to use this last year for Costa Rica. But honestly, if you have any questions at all, like my DMs are open. Just send me a message. I like a good voice note back. And yeah, and just, thank you so much, Lane, for having me. It's great for us to be able to connect.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We will see you on the next one.